We're going to start with a statement from a phenomenal person named Tia Powell Harris of the Weeksville Heritage Center. She's going to talk a lot about Weeksville, but just to say, Creative Time in Weeksville, as I've mentioned a few times, worked on a project called Funk God, Jazz and Medicine, Black Radical Brooklyn. And that started about 3 years ago, the beginning of that. And it's a part of a journey that's led us to this room today. And it's just interesting to me because, of course, the history of Weeksville Heritage Center itself, as Tia will certainly indicate, resonates within, I think, all the conversations that we're having here in this room and in the discussions and such. So it's just an interesting historical narrative situated in space, articulating issues of race, class, cultural production, dreams, gardening, magic, wonderfulness, community spirit. So please join me in welcoming to the stage Executive Director of Weeksville Heritage Center, Tia Powell Harris.
It is a pleasure to be here. Let's do this. There's the famous Weeksville cookie. And there we are. I'd like to begin by sharing a Sudanese proverb with you. It goes a little bit like this. We desire to bequeath two things to our children. The first one is roots. The other one is wings. History is rooting. History provides the anchor, the inspiration, the resolve to navigate the present and prepare for the future. So we seek our histories in a variety of places. And if we're very lucky, our quest begins and is nurtured at home. But we continue to seek our history when we enter school. And as several speakers have said, and you can testify to, the Black narrative and voices of color are more often than not available in the textbooks, the curriculum, and the school experience. And if you doubt me, listen very closely to our young soldiers at Yale University. Hear what they have to say about their school environment. So, what are we left to do? How do we bring these untold stories of American history to the people who need to hear them most? How do we give our children and ourselves the roots that spawn wings? I suggest that a lion's share of the responsibility rests squarely on the shoulders of historic sites, museums, and all conduits of art and culture. I suggest that, yes, there is a history that's told in the schools. More likely than not, it's the history of enslaved people in this country without the other side of emancipation histories. I suggest we concentrate on some emancipation histories that are positive and uplifting. I will tell you one now. In 1838, James Weeks purchased land in what we now call Crown Heights, Brooklyn. He and other like-minded visionaries and inspired activists purchased this land and then sold parcels of it to other free people of color. This was strategic. This was intentional. You know that a black male that owned land valued at $250 was afforded the right to vote. So what these activists were doing was they were building a community, a sustainable, enduring power base, and they were very, very successful. At its height, Weeksville was 500 residents large. stage. There were schools, there were churches, there was an asylum, there was a home for the aged, there was an African Civilization Society, there was a newspaper, and there was a sports team, the Weeksville Unknowns. Prophetic, don't you think? Well, Brooklyn grew up and around and subsumed historic Weeksville. Fast forward 1968, approximately, a class at Pratt University was studying neighborhood history. The class was taught by James Hurley, who suggested that the students go out into the neighborhood and see if they could find any remnants of historic Weeksville. Remnants they did find. 4 houses. They identified them first by foot and then by air. But the most exciting part of this story is what happened next. It was the community that came to bear on this campaign to preserve these houses and therefore, thereby preserving our history. And it was the children who led the cause. It was the children who donated their pennies to the preservation effort. It was the children who testified before the Landmark Commission and had these houses designated as historic landmarks. It was the children who participated in one of the first archaeological digs that unearthed objects that remain a part of the Weeksville archives. Well, Weeksville is still breaking ground. And that is due in no small part to a cadre of women who preceded me. Pam Green, Elissa Blount Moorhead, Jennifer Scott, Anita Romero Warren. They are responsible for the Weeksville of today. They created this stage where history can be shared. Now, I have a theory. I say that we all see life through a particular lens. So there are some people who look out, who peer out on life, and they see numbers and equations and formulas, and those are the mathematicians. There are others who peer out on life, and they see line and shape and texture and color and hue. Those are the visual artists. Well, I've always seen life through the lens of theater. To me, environment is a stage, is a set. To me, the people on the subway are not people, they're characters. I don't give speeches, I deliver monologues. I don't ask why, I ask, but what is my motivation here? So to arrive on this stage, this awesome stage that is now the new Weeksville, opened up a possibility to me. What can Tia bring to this thing that is already incredible? How about theater? So we began an initiative that's not new. In my age, we called it environmental theater. Today they call it site-specific theater, which means that when an audience arrives to a performance, they are immersed in the art. As a matter of fact, the art is informed and supports and celebrates the place. Our first foray into site-specific theater was a play written by a very talented young playwright named Chelsea Harrison. That would be my daughter. She wrote a play called Daughters of the Bayou. This is a play about Marie Laveau, voodoo priestess of New Orleans. So you're saying to me, New Orleans, Crown Heights, New Orleans, Crown Heights, what's that about if you're talking place? Well, the significant thing about Marie Laveau is that she was a free person of color. In 19th century New Orleans, she was an entrepreneur and she was a powerful community leader. So I asked that group of young artists to figure out how to immerse the audience. What they did was they provided an opportunity for the audience to get into costume first. So we all learned how to wrap a Marie Laveau turban, and we wore it for the rest of the day. Then, as the audience was drawn into the historic Hunter Fly Road houses, what they found there were the characters in the play had inhabited the houses. So they walked through the houses as the characters went about their daily chores. They were in the kitchen, they were in the garden, they were arguing, they were peering out into the world through their own lens. By the time the audience got into the actual production, they had already been immersed in the world of the play. They had already discovered a relationship to these characters. I'm biased, but I think it was a huge success. Our second foray into site-specific theater was through the Brooklyn Beat Festival. Now, imagine with me. Music blasts from a third-floor apartment in Kingsborough houses as you walk down Bergen Street, searching for the entrance to the Beat at Weeksville. Miraculously, though, as you enter the gates and step on the fertile ground, the music disappears. You're drawn into the historic houses where you see, first, a man telling you about what it felt like to work in Weeksville. Next, Junius C. Morrell, educator and abolitionist. Next, Sylvia Johnson, who tells you what it was like to go to school in Weeksville. You notice a script on the kitchen table. Her words are represented on the script, but there's also an opportunity for an interviewer to participate. You take on that job. Finally, you go into the fourth house where you hear music. You peer into the living room, and there is the most adorable couple swing dancing to an Ellington piece. You feel a little voyeuristic, but you can't leave because it's so enchanting. So a bell rings. All the historic Weeksville residents come out to Hunter Fly Road, take off a piece of their costuming, and disappear across the field. When you get on the other side of the field, Keisha, who was Sylvia a moment ago, is waiting there. She cups her hand to your ear and whispers a poem about what it's like to be a Jamaican woman in Crown Heights today. You go into the performance space, and Blacka the Dancer is having a hip-hop class. Of course, he invites you to join, but you ain't ready for that yet. So you tip on over to the Lost Jazz Shrines of Brooklyn exhibition, where our own Ngoma is playing his sultry electric violin and reading his own interpretation of the Weeksville history, which he calls his story. Well, now you're energized, and you can go back and do the hip-hop class. Ultimately, though, you are exhausted at the end of this immersion. As you leave the campus, you take one more opportunity to get a picture of those glowing, historic Hunter Fly Road houses. You instantly upload the photograph to Instagram, hashtag Weeksville, hashtag fertile grounds, hashtag roots to wings. Thank you.